In our day-to-day lives, the smallest annoyances often put our patience to the test. A morning commute, snarled by unexpected traffic, an offhand comment from a coworker that catches you off guard, the moment your phone dies just when you need it most. These moments, trivial in isolation, have the power to derail your entire day, not because of the incidents themselves, but because of how you choose to respond. And this is precisely where the timeless wisdom of Stoicism steps in, offering you a roadmap for transforming daily irritations into profound opportunities for growth, resilience, and inner peace. Stoicism is often misunderstood as an austere academic philosophy reserved for toga-clad scholars in ancient Rome. Yet its true power lies in its practical application to modern life. Far from mere intellectual exercises, the central tenets of Stoicism equip us with cognitive tools to manage our reactions, cultivate emotional equilibrium, and forge a mindset of unshakable calm. By adopting these principles, you will gain mastery over your inner world, allowing you to navigate external chaos with serene composure. 1. Understanding anger as information. Imagine standing in your kitchen, coffee in hand, when a text pops up with news you didn't expect. Your heart quickens, your jaw tightens, and anger begins to bubble. You might think this visceral reaction is purely about the message itself, but Stoicism teaches that what truly trips you up is not the event, but your interpretation of it. Anger in the Stoic worldview is far more than a fleeting emotion. It is a messenger bearing information about the stories you tell yourself. When anger flares, it signals that your internal expectations are clashing with external reality. Did you expect that text to arrive calmly? Did you believe you had more control over how information would reach you? Each assumption you hold forms a lens through which events are filtered, and when reality violates those assumptions, your mind screams. Epictetus, who spent much of his life as a slave in ancient Rome, boiled this idea down to a powerful directive. It's not what happens to you, but how you interpret what happens to you that counts. In other words, two people can face the identical situation, being cut off in a crowded street, receiving a blunt email, or encountering a last-minute meeting request, and one will storm in rage while the other barely flinches. The difference lies not in the external trigger, but in the narratives each person constructs about that trigger. To leverage this insight, begin by asking yourself 3 probing questions whenever you feel anger rising. What belief am I holding right now? Perhaps you believe that drivers ought to signal, or that colleagues should treat deadlines with a shared sense of urgency. Identifying these hidden beliefs exposes the root of your irritation. Is this belief realistic? Traffic is inherently unpredictable. Teammates juggle priorities you cannot see. When you evaluate your belief against the messy complexity of life, you often discover that your expectation was too rigid. What alternative interpretations are possible? Maybe that driver was rushing a sick child to the hospital, or that your colleague was double booked, not careless. Entertaining multiple explanations tames the mind's tendency to default to personal affront. Recognizing anger as a messenger transforms its role. Rather than a volcanic eruption to be suppressed or indulged, it becomes a beacon pointing to internal judgments in need of adjustment. This shift is subtle but profound. You move from being at the mercy of emotions to becoming a curious investigator of your psyche. Let's revisit the classic example of being cut off in traffic. The immediate ouch of anger usually stems from believing you, and only you, have a rightful claim to road space. But does one driver's maneuver truly violate an immutable law, or does it simply reflect human fallibility? When you view the incident through the lens of universal unpredictability, the sting eases. You still have the right of way, but you no longer feed resentment. Even more revealing is how this practice extends beyond simple indignities. In personal relationships, hurtful words can wound deeply because we expect loved ones to understand our unspoken needs. But Stoicism reminds us that no one has telepathy. We must communicate transparently. When anger arises in these contexts, it flags a breakdown in communication or an unfair expectation of mind reading. By reframing anger as data, valuable signals rather than destructive forces, you harness its energy productively. You learn which stories you cling to and which assumptions need recalibration. Over time, this reflective stance dissolves much of life's unnecessary drama, replacing reactive outbursts with measured curiosity about the workings of your mind. 2. The pause, creating space between stimulus and response. In the heat of the moment, our first instinct is often our most primal, a snap of the tongue, a clenched fist, or an impulsive decision fueled by adrenaline and emotion. Stoicism teaches that this reflexive reaction is precisely what we must interrupt. The power of the Stoic pause lies in its simplicity, a deliberate, brief interruption that transforms impulsive reaction into considered response. Imagine you're in a critical meeting when a colleague unexpectedly questions your proposal, their tone sharper than you anticipated. The familiar rush of indignation surges, your cheeks flush, your mind races for a rebuttal, and your pulse pounds. In that instant, you stand at a crossroads, follow the instinctive path of immediate defense, or carve out a moment to pause, breathe, and choose a different route. This pause is more than just a break in time. It is an act of mindfulness, an anchoring of your awareness in the present moment. Rather than allowing the mind to spiral into runaway emotion, picking apart the colleague's tone, rehashing past slights, or plotting vengeance, you divert attention to your breath. A single conscious inhalation, a slow exhalation. In this small act, you reclaim agency over your mind. Neuroscience supports the effectiveness of this pause. When faced with a threat or provocation, the amygdala, our brain's alarm system, fires rapidly, triggering fight or flight responses. Yet the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, operates more slowly. By forcing even a split-second delay, you give your rational mind the chance to catch up, assess the situation, and choose a response aligned with your values. How do you cultivate this invaluable habit? Start with micro-pauses woven into everyday life. Set a subtle trigger, perhaps a gentle reminder on your phone every hour, or a visual cue like a small stone on your desk. When the reminder sounds or the stone catches your eye, take 2 full breaths, scanning your body for tension. Notice any tightness in your shoulders, clenching in your jaw, or quickening of the heart. Acknowledge these sensations without judgment. They are neither good nor bad, but data points. In practice, this pause can take many forms. It can be the momentary stillness before replying to an upsetting email. It can be a simple mental count, 1, 2, 3, before uttering words in a stressful conversation. It can be closing your eyes for a heartbeat when traffic tests your limits. Each enactment of this pause reinforces neural pathways, making the habit more automatic over time. Consider an everyday scenario. You're scrolling through social media and a friend's post ignites frustration. Perhaps you feel overlooked or unjustly criticized. Your thumb hovers over the keyboard, itching to type a quick, sharp response. At this crossroads, deploy the Stoic pause. Close your eyes, breathe slowly, and ask yourself, what outcome do I truly desire? Do I want to fuel conflict or foster understanding? In that moment, you might realize that silence or a measured reply better serves your long-term relationships and inner tranquility. The pause also extends to self-talk. We often berate ourselves when under stress. Why did I say that? Or I should have known better. By pausing, you interrupt this cycle of self-criticism and instead offer yourself a more compassionate inner voice. I notice I'm upset. That's okay. What can I learn from this feeling? This shift from reactive self-attack to reflective self-inquiry builds resilience and self-awareness. Over time, the pause becomes the gateway to choice. You begin to respond to life's provocations from a place of clarity and purpose rather than reflex. You might still feel the initial sting of anger or disappointment, but it no longer hijacks your behavior. Instead, it serves as a signal. Something here requires my attention. With practice, those split-second interruptions expand into moments of insight, guiding you to responses that align with your highest principles. In essence, the Stoic pause is the bridge between stimulus and response, where our humanity meets our highest ideals. By embedding these moments of mindful breathing and reflection into your daily routines, you cultivate not only emotional equilibrium, but a habit of conscious living, one that transforms each encounter with aggravation into an opportunity for calm, clarity, and growth. 3. Patience, the art of wait and see. Patience is often dismissed as a passive virtue, an unfortunate necessity imposed by life's delays. Yet in the Stoic tradition, patience is anything but passive. It is a dynamic practice, a deliberate stance of openness and acceptance in the face of life's inherent unpredictability. Through patience, we learn to transform waiting from a begrudged obligation into an active cultivation of resilience and presence. At its core, impatience stems from our expectations. We live in an age of immediate responses, instant messaging, rapid-fire email notifications, one-click purchases. When reality fails to conform to our desires for speed and efficiency, irritation arises. Stoicism invites us to recalibrate these expectations. Life unfolds on its timetable, with twists and turns often beyond our control. Recognizing this fundamental truth allows us to approach delays not as setbacks, but as natural elements of the human experience. To practice patience, begin by shifting your mindset toward obstacles. When you encounter a red light, rather than tapping the steering wheel in frustration, remind yourself that this moment is part of the journey, not an error in the system. When a colleague misses a deadline, consider the myriad factors influencing their performance. Unexpected challenges, competing priorities, and personal issues you may not know about. Each pause, each interruption becomes fodder for understanding rather than fuel for resentment. Concrete exercises can anchor this mindset in everyday life. One effective technique is the stop, observe, reflect method. Stop when you feel the first twinge of impatience, a sigh, a rapid heartbeat, or an urge to complain. Pause. Cease your current activity, even if only for a second. Observe. Notice the sensations in your body. Is your chest tight? Are your hands clenched? Acknowledge these physical signals without self-judgment. They are simply messengers alerting you to inner turmoil. Reflect. Ask yourself, what expectation is being challenged? Identify the belief that everything should proceed smoothly. Then reframe. This delay is natural, and I can use it constructively. Over time, these micro practices build a habitual response of calm awareness. Instead of reflexive complaint, you develop a measured acceptance that diffuses tension. Another powerful approach is to use waiting periods as opportunities for growth. Imagine you're boarding a plane and facing a long security line. Instead of scrolling through social media, pause and practice focused breathing. Inhale slowly for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4. This simple rhythm anchors you in the present moment, converting idle minutes into mindful reprieves. Similarly, when you're on hold during a telephone call, resist the urge to vent. Instead, mentally recite a Stoic phrase, "This too shall pass," or silently reflect on a value you wish to embody, patience, humility, or perseverance. Stoics also emphasize the power of perspective and patience. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Remember how long you have been putting off these things and how ridiculous it is to delay any longer." Ironically, we often delay taking patient action while lamenting perceived delays. By shifting perspective, viewing waiting as an invitation rather than a punishment, you reclaim agency. You see that each moment, even when unhurried, contributes to your inner development. Real-life scenarios further illustrate how patience deepens resilience. Consider a software developer awaiting a critical code review. The suspense can breed anxiety. What if the review uncovers major flaws? Yet by practicing patience, the developer can use the waiting window to revisit documentation, draft improvements, or explore creative solutions. The interval becomes fertile ground for preparation rather than a source of stress. In personal relationships, patience fosters understanding. When a friend arrives late to an important gathering, frustration may surge, especially if you value punctuality. Yet, exercising patience means listening to their explanation without assumption. Perhaps they encountered an emergency, or maybe they struggled with a personal hardship. By suspending judgment, you strengthen the bond and model compassionate engagement. Finally, patience extends to long-term aspirations. Whether pursuing a professional certification, mastering a musical instrument, or nurturing a meaningful relationship, progress is rarely linear. There will be setbacks, plateaus, and moments of doubt. Stoic patience reminds us that true growth requires consistent effort over time. By celebrating incremental progress, each practice session, each draft completed, each honest conversation, you sustain motivation and avoid burnout. In embodying the art of wait and see, you transform patience into a superpower. It tames anxiety, anchors presence, and opens space for creativity and empathy. By choosing to embrace delays as allies rather than enemies, you align with life's natural rhythms and cultivate an unshakable foundation of calm. Through patience, the Stoic path becomes not a distant ideal, but a lived reality, moment by moment, breath by breath. Impermanence, embracing life's transience. Imagine standing by a riverbank, watching water rush past your feet. Each drop that flows by is unique. This very moment will never return. Stoicism invites us to see our lives in the same light. Every experience, emotion, success, and setback is part of an ever-moving current. Clinging to any single moment is as futile as trying to hold water in your hand. This recognition of impermanence, and irritations in ancient Stoic terms, liberates us from the constant grasping at permanence and frees our minds from the suffering born of attachment. When anger erupts over a minor slight or a major disappointment, it often stems from a belief that our comfort, our plans, or our relationships should be unchanging. Yet the reality is that nothing in life is static. Your morning coffee might be perfect one day and lukewarm the next. A trusted friend today may drift away tomorrow. Professional success can flourish or falter on unpredictable tides. Understanding impermanence reframes every fleeting irritation as a passing phenomenon, painful now, but destined to dissolve. Marcus Aurelius, writing from a turbulent battlefield, reminded himself that transient are all things, and time itself is but a fleeting moment. By meditating on this truth, we cultivate a perspective that softens anger's edge. The next time a careless email leaves you fuming or a friend's comment wounds your pride, recall that transient nature. See the irritation as a temporary visitor, lacking the power to define your inner state. One practical exercise is the morning memento. Each dawn, spend a few moments reflecting on 3 elements of your life that are impermanent: your health, relationships, possessions, and consider how you would feel if they changed tomorrow. This exercise is not meant to induce anxiety, but to instill gratitude and perspective. By acknowledging that nothing is guaranteed, you appreciate the present and reduce the shock when circumstances shift. Impermanence also invites compassion. When someone acts out of anger or neglect, perhaps a customer service agent is curt or a loved one snaps in frustration, remember that they too are subject to life's flux. Their missteps are not fixed character traits, but momentary reactions shaped by their struggles. This understanding can dissolve resentment and open space for empathy. In professional contexts, impermanence teaches resilience. Projects end, companies pivot, and industries evolve. You detach your self-worth from short-lived achievements by internalizing that every career phase is temporary. When a project is canceled, instead of spiraling into anger or defeat, you can pivot gracefully, channeling your energy into new initiatives. Each ending, though potentially painful, becomes fertile ground for fresh beginnings. Impermanence also provides solace in grief. The loss of a loved one can feel like an abyss, but Stoicism suggests that grief itself is a natural response to the beauty of what was fleeting. By honoring the transient nature of your relationship, you embrace the depth of connection you shared, carrying it forward as a guiding light rather than a source of perpetual sorrow. Finally, impermanence fuels purposeful living. Knowing that time is finite and ever-moving, we are compelled to live intentionally. Rather than postponing meaningful conversations, personal growth, or acts of kindness, we seize the moment. We speak words of appreciation, pursue work that matters, and invest in relationships deeply while we can. By embracing life's transience, we transform impermanence from a source of fear into a wellspring of wisdom. Anger loses much of its intensity when viewed against the backdrop of time's river. What seems immense now becomes a ripple in a ceaseless flow. Through daily reflection on impermanence, be it the morning memento or brief pauses throughout your day, you tether your perspective to the natural rhythm of change, forging an inner calm that no external event can permanently disrupt. 5. Forgiveness. Freeing yourself from resentment. Forgiveness in the Stoic tradition is not a concession to wrongdoing, nor a mandate to forget an injury. Rather, it is a powerful exercise in self-liberation. Resentment, Stoics warn, is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. It corrodes your well-being, disrupts mental clarity, and perpetuates a cycle of bitterness. Seneca, a leading Stoic thinker, observed that anger, if left to fester, inflicts wounds far deeper on its host than on the one who provoked it. Thus, forgiveness becomes a tool of self-preservation and personal growth. When someone's words or actions cause you pain, a betrayal of trust, a sharp criticism, or an inadvertent insult, your mind instinctively crafts a narrative casting the offender as a villain. This story amplifies the emotional charge, reinforcing a grudge that tightens like a vice around your heart. Stoicism invites you to challenge and reframe that story by stepping into the role of observer rather than victim. Instead of clinging to outrage, ask yourself, what underlying circumstances might have shaped their behavior? Are they acting out of fear, insecurity, or ignorance? Recognizing their humanity diffuses the moral black and white lens through which you view the offense. A practical exercise in Stoic forgiveness involves writing a brief, candid letter intended first for your eyes only, in which you name the offense, acknowledge your feelings, and then deliberately reattribute motive and context. For example, if a friend canceled plans at the last minute, vent your initial frustration. I felt unimportant and upset when you dropped out. Then revise. You may be overwhelmed at work or facing personal challenges I'm unaware of. Conclude by releasing the emotional charge. I choose to let go of my resentment and remain open to understanding. Over time, this written ritual trains your mind to let go of punitive narratives. Beyond individual exercises, Stoicism teaches that forgiveness is an ongoing attitude, not a one-time event. It's important to distinguish between justice and forgiveness. Justice concerns external actions and consequences, whereas forgiveness is an internal stance. You can pursue fair resolution, addressing wrongdoing through honest conversation or appropriate boundaries, while simultaneously offering forgiveness in your heart. This dual approach preserves both your integrity and your inner peace. Consider a workplace scenario in which a colleague takes credit for your idea. The sting of betrayal can trigger anger and a desire for retribution. A Stoic response begins by pausing to assess control. You cannot change the past, but you can choose your next steps. You might address the issue directly with calm firmness, ensuring credit is properly attributed moving forward. Then, you deliberately forgive the colleague by reframing their action as a misstep rather than a personal attack. Perhaps they felt pressured to deliver results or misunderstood ownership conventions. By doing so, you release the energy of anger and reclaim a clear mind for constructive collaboration. In personal relationships, forgiveness deepens empathy and trust. Recall that everyone carries unseen burdens, stress from health issues, family conflicts, and financial worries. When you forgive loved ones, you acknowledge their complexity and relinquish the expectation of perfection. This doesn't naively disregard harm, it merely refuses to let harm define your emotional state indefinitely. Over time, consistent forgiveness fosters resilience in the relationship, allowing both parties to learn, grow, and move forward. Forgiveness also extends inward. Self-forgiveness is vital when reflecting on mistakes or regrets. Stoicism encourages you to accept that errors are part of human nature. What matters is your response. When self-directed anger surfaces, perhaps after a regrettable outburst or a missed opportunity, apply the same reframing method. Note the mistake, understand the factors that led to it, and commit to wiser choices next time. By practicing self-forgiveness, you cultivate self-compassion, which in turn strengthens your capacity to forgive others. Ultimately, freedom from resentment transforms a reactive mind into a resilient, proactive one. Anger gives you a signal, an opportunity to examine judgments and expectations, while forgiveness releases its grip. As you weave forgiveness into daily practice, through reflection, dialogue, and self-forgiveness, you create mental space for creativity, empathy, and genuine connection. In freeing yourself from old grudges, you clear the path toward a life guided not by past hurts, but by the principles of equanimity and growth. 6. Self-control, the keystone of Stoic strength. In every Stoic exercise, understanding anger, practicing the pause, nurturing patience, embracing impermanence, or offering forgiveness, the central thread binding them together is self-control. Ancient philosophers lauded self-control, enkratia, not as a denial of human feeling, but as its wise steward. It is the capacity to regulate impulses, channel emotions, and choose actions aligned with reason and virtue, rather than being driven by the fleeting tides of passion. At first glance, self-control may appear austere or restrictive. However, consider a skilled archer holding steady, aiming true despite wind or distraction. Self-control is the inner aim that keeps your will aligned with your values. In moments of provocation, whether a sharp retort in a boardroom or the urge to check your phone for yet another distraction, self-control steadies your response, enabling thoughtful action rather than reactive outbursts. Building this keystone virtue requires systematic training through daily disciplines. Begin with small tests of will. Establish micro rules in areas where temptation often strikes. For instance, commit to no screens at the dinner table. This simple boundary cultivates your capacity to resist immediate gratification, whether a tempting notification or a craving for entertainment, reinforcing the muscle of self-command. Similarly, incorporate voluntary discomfort into your routine. Seneca recommended cold baths to fortify the mind against the sting of adversity. A brief cold shower in the morning offers a practical counterpart. As the chill slashes across your skin, notice the impulse to flee back to warmth. Instead, lean into the sensation, regulate your breath, and observe how enduring a few cold seconds strengthens resolve. Over time, these small confrontations with discomfort generalize, empowering you to face larger emotional challenges with calm fortitude. Another pillar of self-control is monitoring internal dialogue. We often amplify frustration through self-talk. "I can't stand this," or "they always do this to me," compounding irritation. Stoicism counsels replacing these reactive narratives with measured affirmations. "I notice my urge to complain. I choose to act thoughtfully." By catching and reframing self-talk, you interrupt the feedback loop that escalates emotion, redirecting energy toward rational choice. A concrete method to cultivate this skill is the if-then plan, a cognitive tool that pairs triggers with predetermined responses. For example, if I feel the nuisance of a delayed email, then I will take 3 deep breaths and compose a calm reply rather than a hurried retort. Over time, the brain learns to associate the trigger with the constructive response, reducing the gap between intention and action. In high-stakes contexts, self-control is the linchpin of effective leadership and personal integrity. Picture a crisis meeting where conflicting priorities ignite heated debate. Those without self-control might defiantly cling to their opinions, inflaming tension. A Stoic leader, by contrast, models composure. They listen actively, speak deliberately, and guide the group toward collaborative solutions. Their calm presence not only de-escalates conflict but inspires collective trust. Self-control also underpins long-term goals. Whether you aspire to financial prudence, physical fitness, or intellectual mastery, every achievement rests on a series of momentary choices where immediate desires challenge future rewards. Stoics encourage visualizing these decisions. Before succumbing to impulse, remember your overarching objective, be it health, knowledge, or ethical consistency. This macro perspective tempers short-lived cravings and fosters disciplined progress. Importantly, self-control is not about perfection, but about resilience. You will encounter failures, missed workouts, tense words uttered in haste, moments of indulgence. Stoicism teaches that these setbacks are part of the path. When you falter, practice self-forgiveness, analyze what went awry, and reaffirm your commitment to improvement. Each recovery from failure reinforces self-control more than unbroken chains of success. In essence, self-control transforms fleeting emotions into deliberate practice, forging a character unshaken by external turbulence. As you weave micro-rules, voluntary discomfort, mindful self-talk, and if-then planning into your life, self-control becomes both shield and compass, protecting inner peace and guiding you steadily toward your highest ideals. 7. The practice framework, turning theory into habit. Grasping Stoic principles mentally is one thing. Weaving them into the fabric of your daily life is another. The real transformation happens through structured practice, a framework that turns theory into an enduring habit. This framework balances reflection, real-time awareness, and retrospective learning, ensuring that Stoic wisdom permeates every corner of your day. Begin each day with intention. Before rising from bed, spend 2 to 5 minutes in silent contemplation or journaling. Recall a Stoic maxim, perhaps Marcus Aurelius's reminder, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Reflect on the challenges likely to arise, the commute, email overload, or interpersonal friction. Visualize one or two specific scenarios and imagine responding with patience, measured speech, and self-control. This mental rehearsal primes your mind, forging neural pathways that predispose you toward a calm, rational reaction when those moments arrive. Throughout the day, cultivate micro breaks of mindful awareness. Set gentle reminders, custom alarms on your phone, or a sticky note on your workstation, prompting you to pause every hour. When the cue sounds, take a 3-count breath. Inhale deeply for 1, hold for 2, and exhale for 3. Scan your body for tension, a tightening in your shoulders, a quickened heartbeat, or a clenched jaw. These periodic checks tether you to the present and interrupt the accumulation of stress and frustration. Pose the relevant question whenever you notice the stirrings of anger, anxiety, or impatience. The act of questioning interrupts automatic reactions and channels your mind toward a rational perspective. These mental scripts bridge the gap between insight and behavior, enabling your rational self to lead your actions. To prevent mechanical application, introduce weekly themes focused on one practice area, such as forgiveness, impermanence, or self-control. For a week, weave that theme into your reflections, pauses, and trigger questions. At week's end, assess progress in your journal, identifying growth and opportunities for deeper exploration. Review your journal weekly to spot patterns. Are certain contexts, emails, family interactions, traffic, consistently challenging? Devote focused reflection to those areas, experimenting with new strategies. Consider partnering with a friend or joining a Stoic community. Sharing experiences and insights reinforces commitment and introduces fresh perspectives. A weekly check-in, either in person or via a messaging group, can involve discussing your journal reflections, debating Stoic quotes, and encouraging each other through setbacks. Finally, anchor your framework in simple physical rituals, a designated meditation cushion, a specific notebook color, or a calming tea before journaling. These sensory cues signal to your brain that it's time to engage in Stoic practice, strengthening the mind-body connection. By systematically applying morning intention, momentary pauses, trigger questions, action prompts, reflective journaling, thematic focus, community support, and sensory anchors, you transform Stoic theory from abstract philosophy into a lived, embodied way of being. This practice framework ensures that the calm, clarity, and resilience you seek are not fleeting insights, but enduring facets of your character. 8. Real-life applications and examples. The true test of Stoic practice lies not in abstract theory, but in the heat of everyday living. Picture this. It's Monday morning, and you're already 10 emails behind when your manager pings you with blunt criticism of your last deliverable. In that instant, you feel a familiar surge of defensiveness pressing on your chest. Instead of firing back a defensive reply, you apply the Stoic pause. You take 2 conscious breaths, silently ask, "What is within my control here?" and choose to listen. As your mind steadies, you calmly paraphrase the feedback to ensure you understood correctly, acknowledge areas for improvement, and propose clear next steps. What began as a potential conflict becomes a constructive dialogue, strengthening both your performance and your professional relationship. Consider another common scenario, the daily commute. Traffic crawls to a halt and you catch sight of a car weaving impatiently through lanes. Irritation flares as you imagine the chaos just ahead of you. Instead of letting anger escalate into road rage, you recall the Stoic principle of impermanence. This jam, like all things, will pass. You redirect your focus to a favorite podcast or simply observe the passing scenery, transforming wasted minutes into a moment of mindfulness. In doing so, you preserve both your mood and your safety. Social media, too, presents ample opportunities to practice Stoicism. A friend's post takes an unexpected political stance, and relatives chime in with heated comments. Your first instinct is to wade into the fray, defending your viewpoint. But you pause, running through the trigger questions. Am I assuming bad intent? Will this exchange matter in 6 months? The answers remind you that virtual arguments often inflame rather than enlighten. You either craft a respectful comment focusing on shared values or simply scroll on, safeguarding your peace of mind. At home, Stoic tools shine in the smallest, most intimate interactions. Late one evening, your teenager storms in after a tough day at school and snaps at you for asking about homework. Your frustrations about work deadlines bubble up. tempting you to match their tone. Instead, you take a patient breath, recognize their struggle is transient, and gently ask if they'd like to talk. By resisting reactive anger and offering empathetic space, you model healthy emotional regulation and deepen your connection. Even in unexpected emergencies, Stoic habits prove invaluable. Imagine discovering a plumbing leak flooding your kitchen. Panic threatens to overwhelm you as water spreads across the floor. Yet because you've practiced deliberate pauses and self-control, you're able to act methodically. You locate the shutoff valve, fetch towels, and call a professional. By channeling adrenaline into purposeful steps rather than panic, you mitigate damage and preserve a clear head. Stoicism also applies to long-term projects where results unfold over months or years. A writer grappling with a novel's third act may grow frustrated by slow progress. Here, patience meets self-control. You schedule brief daily writing sessions rather than binge attempts that burn out quickly. You journal minor milestones, word counts achieved, new scenes sketched, and celebrate those incremental successes. Over time, small, consistent efforts compound into a completed manuscript, illustrating that Stoic endurance outpaces sporadic inspiration. Finally, consider how Stoic practice transforms social gatherings. You attend a networking event with the expectation of making valuable connections. When conversation stalls or awkward silences arise, discomfort tugs at your nerves. Instead of reaching for your phone or shrinking away, you breathe, lean into curiosity, and ask genuine questions. What inspired you to pursue this work? By embracing the moment's imperfection and engaging with presence, you turn potential embarrassment into authentic rapport. In each of these real-life examples, workplace feedback, traffic delays, online exchanges, family tensions, household crises, creative endeavors, or social events, the same Stoic tools recur. Pause, question, reframe, and act in alignment with reason and virtue. Over time, these repeated applications forge a resilient character capable of meeting life's unpredictability with equanimity. Anger no longer derails, impatience no longer consumes, and every challenge becomes an invitation to apply the practice, deepening your mastery of inner peace. 9. Embracing a Stoic mindset as a lifelong journey. Arriving at a Stoic mindset is like planting a sapling rather than raising a skyscraper. It requires patience, nourishment, and attention over time. This path is not a one-time transformation, but a lifelong journey of small, deliberate steps. As you integrate Stoic principles, remember that mastery unfolds through persistence, reflection, and the willingness to learn from setbacks. Every day presents fresh opportunities to reinforce your Stoic foundation. Mornings begin with chosen intentions, and evenings close with honest retrospection. Yet the true test happens in the unplanned moments, when stress peaks, emotions flare, or circumstances veer off script. In those turning points, recall that Stoicism is not a rigid creed, but a flexible compass steering you back to your core values: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Cultivating a Stoic mindset means embracing the perpetual cycle of practice and refinement. You will err sometimes. You may snap at a loved one, succumb to impatience in line, or neglect your mindfulness break amidst chaos. These lapses are not failures, but data, precise indicators of where your practice needs reinforcement. Approach them with the same curiosity you apply to external challenges. Ask yourself, what caused the misstep? Which principle faded from view? What can I adjust next time? Equally essential is celebrating progress, however incremental. Keep a record of victories, moments when you pause before replying, reframe negative judgments, or offer genuine forgiveness. These don't have to be grand triumphs. The simple achievement of preventing a reactive text message or choosing compassion over criticism counts. Acknowledging these successes fuels momentum, solidifying the neural pathways of calm and reasoned action. Stoicism thrives not in isolation, but in community. Engage with fellow learners through discussion groups, book clubs, or online forums. Share challenges and insights, debate interpretations of Stoic texts, and support one another in maintaining accountability. Hearing diverse perspectives illuminates blind spots in your practice and nurtures a collective wisdom that outlasts solitary effort. Deepening your journey involves periodic Stoic retreats, brief interludes dedicated to concentrated reflection. These don't require travel to a mountaintop. Even a weekend at home can suffice. Disconnect from digital distractions. Revisit foundational texts like Marcus Aurelius's Meditations or Seneca's Letters from a Stoic, and journal freely about the lessons that resonate most. These intentional pauses recharge your commitment and deepen your understanding. Over months and years, you'll notice a subtle but profound shift in your orientation toward life's vicissitudes. Where reactive tension once lurked, a calm resilience emerges. You become less attached to outcomes and more focused on consistent practice. Challenges stop feeling like threats and start feeling like invitations to exercise your Stoic toolkit. Each moment of mindful breath, each patient delay, each forgiving thought, and each act of self-control builds upon the last, forging a character marked by steadiness and grace. Ultimately, embracing Stoicism as a lifelong journey means surrendering the pursuit of perfection in favor of continuous growth. You will never transcend all anger or eliminate every distraction, but you will learn to meet life's storms with clear eyes and an open heart. Your power lies not in controlling externals, but in the steadfast stewardship of your mind. You'll still face life's inherent unpredictability and the frustration it brings, but instead of being at its mercy, you will stand firm, anchored by Stoic practices of mindful pause, patient acceptance, forgiveness, and self-control. Anger will no longer hijack your moments. It will serve as an indicator, guiding you toward greater self-awareness and growth. Begin today. Choose one principle, one trigger question, and one daily reflection. As you practice, observe how your responses shift from reactive to reflective. Gradually, the old reactive you will fade, replaced by a calmer, wiser self, someone who meets life's storms with steady resolve and unshakable peace. That is the promise of Stoicism, and it awaits you on this transformative journey.